Thanks for tuning in, guys. Today we talk to a camp director. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Today we got a very special guest to me personally. This man is going through a busy season right now, professionally and personally, and I'm honored that he had some time to carve out kind of last minute, which is awesome. I met Forrest 25 years ago when I was 18 or 19 and can honestly say top 5 people that have impacted my life. Forrest Walker is he's top 5 easy, no question. As a matter of fact, if our third child wasn't a girl, I mean, I guess we probably still could have done it. Was it a girl, we had settled on naming him Forrest after this man. So I'm excited to catch up with him and to introduce him to the big My Job podcast audience. But I'm super excited. Forrest Walker, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Well, it's a pleasure, Clay. You're way too kind, brother. But everything you just said, I reciprocate onto you and Emily. You guys are just dear, dear friends. And, you know, the time that we got to spend together all those years ago were some of the sweetest of my life. And so I appreciate those words. Yeah,
absolutely. Very, very impactful. For you as an individual, but also for what you're doing. So let's jump into it. If you would kind of introduce yourself, tell people what you're doing and how long you've been doing it for.
Yeah. Well, my name is Forrest Walker, and I have the privilege of being the executive director, or you can just say camp director at Camp Vesper Point, which is a Christian summer camp here in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. So we're in the Deep South, and I'm going into my 5th year as director, but probably, let's see, Clay, I think 18th overall working here in terms of summers, but 5th as the full-time year-round camp director.
All right. You've got a very long history with Vesper Point, which, if you Google it, if you're interested, it's a beautiful camp. It sits right on the banks of the Chickamauga Lake, which is part of the Tennessee River. You can't get much prettier real estate in the Southeast, in my opinion, than Vesper Point. And Forrest lives on campus, which is awesome, and gets to enjoy God's beauty every day, which is fantastic. This kind of a loaded question for you guys, Forrest, is how did you first hear about your profession? And maybe go into just a brief detail of your history with Vesper Point.
Yeah, well, happy to do that. You know, I was a camper up here back in the early 90s, and my mom, you know, just casually one day in the winter said, hey, bud, you want to be a camper at Vesper Point? And, you know, I kind of reluctantly said, sure, why not? You know, mainly because my buddies were going to be there. And, you know, Clay, I give my mom credit. I mean, that decision really changed my life, because being a camper up here and then later working in the mid-90s, right out of high school as a counselor, you know, I quickly began to fall in love with the concept of Christian camping and just how unique and special and really essential it is. You know, in my opinion, every kid needs to go to camp and just experience what that's like to be away from home and to hear, you know, just in our case, the gospel, but also just to try new things. So I was a counselor for many, many summers, and then later did other roles like assistant director and all that kind of stuff. Like even into my professional life, I focused on education in college and was a high school teacher, but I would still have the privilege of coming to work at camp here at Vesper Point during those summers because I had summers free. So I just had this acute interest for long-term summer camp ministry, but never really considered that a reality because I was in the teaching profession, and then later became a high school principal for about 9 years. And the Lord very unexpectedly opened up the camp director position here at Vesper Point, and very unexpectedly moved into this back in 2022 and really left the full-time high school principal education role to become a camp director.
When you made that decision back in 2022, I'm sure you and your wife, Alex, there's a lot of prayer and discussion about it.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the camp director position, was what kind of qualifications was so Vesper Point's associated with First Presbyterian in Chattanooga,
right?
What kind of qualifications were they looking for when the position came open?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And, I think a camp director is so much of a niche role, Clay, that every camp is different. And I mean, some camps may require like an outdoor education degree. There may be some that require if you're a pastor, like an ordained minister. So I don't hit any of those. I think in my particular case, working with students for so many years in the classroom, but also just working at camp for at the time 13 years, I think they were looking for somebody with administrative backgrounds who, could hopefully, from an organizational standpoint, lead a ministry, but also just a student background, working with students and kind of understanding how students, what makes them tick, and I think that's what they were looking for, and thankfully, I was able to have both those experiences, and I think that helped in them pursuing me.
Yeah, well, and also, Forrest, you wouldn't say this, but I'll say it. Knowing you in your heart, it doesn't take but 5 minutes to be around you to just observe and appreciate. You've got such a tender heart for young people, especially young people in the community, whether it's Saudi Daisy or Chattanooga. Like that's part of who you are, and that resonates with people. So that surely was a consideration by the church staff when they decided to go with you.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a relational role, and I think that when you're in the camping ministry, you gotta be able to love, in our case, like 3rd through 10th graders. And so it's if that's not there, then I would encourage somebody never to go into it. But yeah, it's definitely a relational role.
Absolutely. This kind of getting more into the nitty gritty of the job. What's well, I'll preface it with this: you have opportunities to travel to different conferences. There's like camp conferences, aren't there? I know I've seen some Facebook posts you traveling to some of that stuff. So you have the ability to kind of network and see trends happening. And what, Forrest, if you can answer this, what is the average like entry level salary?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're going to get all over the board on that one. So if you were to Google like entry level salary for camp director, I mean, you literally, depending on the state you're in, are going to get anywhere from 30,000 to, I don't know, 90,000. I mean, it honestly depends on who owns the camp, years of experience, size of the camp, wide range. But take the median of that range, Clay, and so you're talking like 40 to 75 probably would be like a bullseye kind of mean area.
Sure. Forrest, so break it down for me. What is an average day like for a camp director? And I know it's based kind of on the season and stuff. So maybe walk us through the summer average day and then kind of off season. I know y'all are big in the retreats and stuff. So what does that look like for you guys?
Well, the summer is our main focus. And so at any given time during our summer camp, which we do 7 full weeks, 3rd through 10th graders. And so we alternate each week. 3rd through 6th graders are there. And then the next week it's 7th through 10th graders. So that's a huge, difference right there. Mm-hmm. But man, a typical day for me, it's a little daunting when I wake up, Clay, because I'm up early and, I'll get up and just look at my day and realize I'm responsible for 200 campers and, 65 staff. And that, that takes a lot of prayer. And so it's a lot of, for me, relationship building. I do blog posts every day on our website to update parents. And I like to jump in. I really enjoy making sure I'm in 3 meals a day, hanging out, roaming, checking on staff. My wife and I lifeguard. We drive boats. We lead a small group with our staff, and so certainly some of that is desk work. I mean, I've got to do the administrative, kind of the executive director stuff, budgeting and email, and just making sure that things are running smoothly from a business standpoint. The summer for me is really just about being present to make sure the camp is functioning smoothly, and that our leadership team, that I'm leading them well, and making sure that they are equipped. And there's always the emergency or the issues that come up. And so the summer is very, very full it's really 24/7 because we're an overnight camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a lot of responsibility when you're dealing with that many kids. You mentioned the fall and the spring, we're a retreat and conference center. And so that is typically led by our retreat director, who we have a wonderful retreat director up here who does a great job. My role is more of support and just, meeting people, interacting. I do help lifeguard and boat drive. But I spend a lot of my time supporting that and doing a lot of recruiting and interviewing and traveling and, like you said, conferences and researching and reading and purchasing and just projects and just all full encompassing during the off season to get ready for the next summer. And so the wheels are kind of always spinning when you're a camp director, Clay, but it's so much fun.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. With the amount of traffic that y'all see, do you ever quantify how many people are actually interacting with the camp over the years? Is that a number y'all monitor?
We do. We do. In fact, just from a quantitative standpoint, we had 1,305 campers last summer, 2025. We had, let's see here, over 2,000 retreat guests in the fiscal year. So that right there is over 3,000. But then you add in families and parents who are on the property, camper families.
Yeah.
I mean, it's thousands of people that are on this property, and that is how we like it. We want as many people to use camp as possible because, that's why we feel like it's here.
Yeah. But also, as you're talking, and you mentioned it earlier, that's a heavy responsibility on your shoulders. That's a lot of, cause I've been there. I grew up at Vesper Point, cutting my teeth. It's a lot of rattlesnakes and scorpions and sharp rocks and hornets' nests and stuff. I mean, the little stuff that is bound to happen. That's a lot of people you got to be responsible for.
It is. And, you've got to love being out here. It like you said, you're living in the woods, and with that comes a little bit of rugged terrain. And I mean, I've my goodness, Clay, I've a lot of animals. I mean, I recently contracted a tick-borne illness. I mean, you got to really,
yeah,
you got to love what you're doing out here, which we do.
Sure.
But it is a lot of responsibility.
I was listening to a guy's podcast a couple days ago, and he was talking about social media's influence on how we relate to people. And and this with Facebook or Instagram, it creates this tribalism and this kind of false sense of relationships. And one thing I've noticed is working with high school kids and college kids through the Young Life organization is there is this deep desire to be known and loved by people on a personal level. So my question is, the question in general is, what trends are you seeing in the industry? But more specifically, Forrest, you've been doing the executive director for 5 years. Have you seen a trend in how campership responds to relationships? Or I'm assuming at camp they don't have phones or anything. So can you talk a little bit about what that transition's like and any observations you've seen?
Man, what a great question. Clay, we have a theme every summer, and the theme for 2026, we actually haven't announced it yet, but I'll share it with you, is seen and known. That's going to be our theme for the summer. And we are a screen and phone free environment, not only for campers, but for staff. And, we have found that to be incredibly healthy and just freeing when staff turn their phones in, and when we're not distracted by noises and clicks and social media. In fact, I have a lot of parents that will come up to me and thank me, for a week in the woods where their kid is not inundated with technology. And the thing that I've seen in the last several summers is the degree of addiction that a lot of our kids are facing with phones. I mean, we have campers up here, Clay, that literally we have seen go through what I call like tech withdrawal, where their depth perception from walking through the woods, they can have difficulty doing that. We had campers that would run into trees a lot this past summer and get injured.
Really?
And it happens so many times with like skinned knees and just behavioral things that I really began to personally think that it was their brains just in a totally different environment where there is nothing but trees and birds and trails and leaves, and it detoxes your brain from constant screen usage. And I just, we're not going to change that. We're committed to trying to create an alternative experience for campers and staff alike, where we can focus on relationships and the gospel and the environment around us, where we don't always have to be inundated with tech. And so it is a concern I have, but I don't see that stopping, Clay. Yeah. Like I think it's only going to continue to increase.
Hey, so let's get some personal stuff. Best part of the job and most challenging part of being a camp director?
Oh man, the best part for me is just getting to watch the impact that camp has on campers and staff. And Clay, you remember this, a week of camp equivocates, in my opinion, and there's research that backs this up, to like 30 to 60 or more days of normal day experience. 5 days at camp can literally change the kid's life. And it's very concentrated. And it's like most people that go to camp, if they have a good experience, and we hope they all do, they don't forget that camp. They don't forget it.
Yeah.
It's like imprinted on their minds, and getting to be a part of that and see radical change, and to see the Lord really working on kids, especially kids that are just struggling and damaged, and see the impact, and all staff too, is so rewarding in 2025, where the world is a very scary place. And, I think camp hopefully will never become outdated, because kids need a place to go where they're heard, they feel safe, and they can talk to people about stuff and hard stuff. And we have a rule up here that, look, if kids, they can ask whatever they want, and we train our staff, of course, how to handle certain topics. But so that's my favorite thing. The most challenging thing for me, admittedly, is working with this age group and generation of staff.
Really?
It is not easy. And I say that as a 48-year-old guy who was born in the 70s, okay? And just, I am having to learn great deals of patience and great deals of wisdom that I need to lead 16 to 22-year-olds whose experience and generational realities are a lot different than mine.
Yeah.
And those generational gaps can cause a lot of frustration. And what I'm learning is that me getting frustrated is usually not helpful. And I'm getting older, and it behooves me, to really try to research and to learn, how to work with, from a workforce standpoint, people that you hire. It's hard. And I am constantly needing prayer for that, because, and I'm not trying to bash, this current generation. It's just, that's just an honest answer to your question.
Forrest, do you think every generation struggles with that, or is it more specific because of the technology advancements and the dependency on all this stuff? Or did our parents struggle with this, with the new workforce coming in with them? What do you think?
I think so. I mean, I think I'm on the tail end of Gen X, right? And I don't know, Clay, I put myself, like, when I was born in the 70s, I'm sure there were people that looked at me in the 1980s and 90s and had the exact same struggles with me.
Yeah.
Like my parents' generation. And so here I am now, a parent. We've got 3 kids. So, yeah, I mean, I think it behooves us to not think that our generation is the best and that, Gen Alpha or Gen Zs are just crazy. But it behooves us to try and understand them and to relate to them and to lead them. Like in my case, I'm responsible for leading them in a camp environment. So I need to study them and have conversations with them and not get so frustrated and think that everybody born in a different generation than me is just, awful. But I think that is a temptation for us to do across generations. And that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. But I think the answer to your question is yes.
What do you think you would be doing if you weren't a camp director?
Well, it's funny, 6 years ago, if you had told me I'd be in this role, I would have called you crazy. There's no way. So I would say, probably teaching. Clay, I still actually get to teach 2 high school classes during the school year, which is so fun. I have a junior and a senior class, math teacher. But I would probably be full-time education again. I don't see myself being in administration. Probably just teaching high school math would be what I'd likely be doing if I were not in a camp ministry business.
Yeah. If there is somebody who's had experience with camp and interested in it, what could they be doing to maybe as a career? Man, I think I might be doing this. I think your position, Forrest, is a little unique because you weren't actively seeking a camp director spot. But there might be some people who they're bent interest, personality into something like that. So what would your advice be to someone who might be considering doing this full time as a camp director?
Yeah, you are correct. I wasn't. Maybe indirectly I was. I would first of all encourage any young person who's really thinking about it, to consider. If you do feel called to go to college, it helps to pursue like an outdoor recreation ministry degree if you can. If you're post-college, getting a master's, if you're able to do it, is always going to look really good on a resume. But make sure your resume is always updated and that, you are looking at camp association websites.
Okay.
Most camps, whether they're accredited or belong to an association, have websites where they're posting job openings. And, I would encourage young people to look for like an assistant director position to get some experience where you're working in a support role that gives you some experience at a camp. If you interview and get that you could continue to progress and, if the director or executive director position is something they wanted to do, you're going to need that experience, to build a resume. And so and I do have people that call me and, hey, do you have any openings?
Yeah.
Do you know of any camps that are looking for people? And that's usually what I tell them to do, is that, you need to really, like I said earlier, it's a niche thing. You kind of have to be in the right place at the right time, Clay, with camp directing, because it's just, it's not an easy thing to get into.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Camp association websites. I didn't even think that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good resource to see what's out there. As we're wrapping up, Forrest, I always ask my guests, do you have any books that you're listening to? And it doesn't have to be professional, just any books on your nightstand or that you and Alex are talking about that you could recommend to the listeners?
Oh yeah. Well, okay. The one, and I'm not a huge reader. I'm just so much of a math guy, which I'm trying to get better at that. Clay, the best book I have read in the last several years is a book by Stephen James and David Thomas called Wild Things. And it is a book about raising boys.
Okay.
And just, our youngest is a boy. He's 9. I mean, I am going to gift this book to like all my brother-in-laws and my father-in-law. It is the best book I've ever read on parenting, but specifically raising boys. And so that may not, there's actually some stuff I'm going to be using in our staff training with our guy counselors. Highly recommend that book to your listeners.
Okay.
And then I'm also going through, for the first time ever, just read through the Bible in a year guide. And it's just been so wonderful, for me to navigate through the entire Bible. And I think I'm on day like 192. So that has been a huge journey for me, which is very, very helpful.
Okay. One last question for you, friend. Maybe my favorite question is talking to people who are smarter than me. One piece of advice, whether it's fatherhood or relationships or professional, what's one piece of advice you can leave me and the listeners before we cut out?
Oh man. Gosh, I think I would just tell people, your purpose on the earth is not so that you can advance yourself and you can heap purpose upon yourself on a daily basis, but how can you serve others? How can you do things for other people? And that can be anything. And so never saying I'm too big or good for that, whether it's, cleaning up a mess or scrubbing a toilet, but just looking for ways to serve when nobody's looking. To me, is something that I think can change somebody's life and change somebody's day.
Yeah, that's good, man. Forrest, I'm gonna end with this, and this because we've talked about it. I'm so grateful for Vesper Point and for you because of the environment that you are creating at camp. And if I could tell the staff and campers, mainly the staff, one thing, it's take advantage of this unique time at camp because it will develop lifelong relationships and networking and community. You know this, Forrest. I worked with a guy out there, Jonathan, and just happened to be driving through Denver a week ago with my son and pulled off and had an hour and a half conversation. And it was the best conversation. And I hadn't seen Jonathan in, 20 years, So I want to encourage you, Forrest, what you're doing. It's worth it. And I hope it never feels like a job because what you're doing is changing lives, at the very core of it. You are impacting young people. It's an amazing thing.
Thank you, John. I almost called you Jonathan. Clay, I appreciate it. I love Jonathan Drinkwine. I miss him. I miss you guys. I would love to have you guys come on back and visit us sometime here in Chattanooga. And thank you so much for those kind words. And it really doesn't feel like a job most days, to be honest. And what a treat to get to chat with you today.
This was fun. Yeah, Forrest, I hope to see you soon. Let's try to make that happen this spring, okay?
We'll do it, and I appreciate it. Would love that.
All right, thanks, Forrest. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the information and found it worth your time. We're always on the hunt for guests who are passionate about what they do and want to talk about it. So if you think you'd be interested in coming on, or if you're curious about a profession and want to know more about it, hit us up. We'll do our best to accommodate. Our email is info@myjobpodcast.com. We look forward to connecting with you. Have a great day.